it and go back and listen. So everyone, welcome to another Wisdom Wednesday, and I am so stoked for today's session. I'm going to be listening intently myself. Joe has very incredible history in his field and is coming from a space of just truly wanting to help us as an industry have better support in the professionals that we bring on board. And I know most of you got your taxes done by April. Maybe some of you filed an extension for October, but I also know from my coaching clients how often people are looking to find a new accountant. So Joe, if you would just take maybe 30 to 60 seconds to give a little bit of your background, and then let's jump right in. I know you have a lot to cover in a short period of time.
And let me see. I do have some slides,
Wonderful.
and I guess
Oh,
really
I need to make you co-host. I did that on the other link and forgot to do it on this one. So
okay.
there we go.
And I just, word of caution, I am technically inept. So
We're going to say your strengths lie elsewhere, Joe.
yeah, perfectly. I like that. I like that. That suits me well.
Great.
So a little bit about my background. I'm a CPA. I grew up here in Colorado, and my background is I worked primarily with very, very large companies, and moved from Colorado to Phoenix to LA to New York, ultimately to DC. And my 5 clients that I ultimately ended up with were GE, Verizon, AT&T, Honeywell, and Viacom. And in working with those clients, we worked on some very complex tax strategies. As I moved from Ernst & Young to smaller firms, I took those strategies, retired on my 50th birthday to move back home to Colorado from DC, and brought those strategies with me and started working with smaller businesses. Those strategies work very well with small businesses. And as I started working with the businesses, I noticed that a lot of the accountants that I was working with really didn't work with these strategies or didn't understand them. And that created a little conflict with some of the clients I was working with. So let me see if I can do this here. All right, can you all see the slides?
I can see him just fine.
Perfectly. Okay. So I work very closely with the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, which is our trade organization. It's a little bit like NAR. And I heard a statistic a couple months ago that said the median age of our membership is 73. And I disregarded it because I didn't believe it. And then I heard it again through 2 or 3 different sources, and really have come to find out that, yeah, it is actually 73. Now, there's a lot of reasons why it's older, but the average age of the CPAs in the United States is north of 60. And there's a lot of CPAs that are retiring without the number of without accountants, tax return preparers, advisors coming into the market. And so all of us, especially those under the age of 50, are really going to have to deal with what to do when your accountant retires, not, if they retire. And so that's the purpose of this presentation, is kind of how to prepare for that change. Now, I want to kind of start out with my journey, how I got to where I am, not the last 30 years, of course, but the last 30 days and really the last 30 weeks. And then where do we start? Kind of talking about the value versus your return, the relationship that you want to have with a provider, as well as talking about a little bit about risk and differentiating between specialists and generalists, and how we get started in this process. How did I get here? And specifically the last 30 weeks, it's, I bought a home, my home here in Denver. And at the same time I was buying my home, I was working with a realtor and she was buying rental properties. And I asked her, are you doing a cost segregation study? And I got a blank stare. She had no idea what that was, which is I expected. And so I talked to her and she decided to move forward with her rental properties. And what I didn't expect is her advisor had never heard of a cost segregation study. And so I sat down with him and we walked through it. And I got a lot of pushback from her CPA. And I was reassured that he's the best in the business. He never makes mistakes, blah, 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 blah. I've been working with him for years. And, I heard that time and time again as I started working with more realtors and their advisors. I kept hearing, this is fraud, this is illegal, even though the service has really backed this since the 1930s, and it's almost 100 years old. Some of the other things that I was bringing to the table to realtors, I was being told by their advisors that this is way too risky. You can't do this, even though the IRS has protocols in place and how to do this. They're actually advising CPAs and tax return preparers how to put these in place in IRS publications. So there's little to no risk in these. And so I started asking, why are we getting so much pushback from our advisors? And that's why I started putting these slides together. This is my resume, which is somewhat irrelevant. I just wanted you to see what I was. What I'm not is I'm not a tax return preparer. If you call me and say, hey, Joe, can you prepare my return? My answer is always going to be no. If I prepare your return, it's malpractice. And I'm not, after 30 some years of practice, not going to start doing this work now. I'll help you find someone. I don't get paid a commission. I don't get paid anything to help you find someone. I'm doing this simply because I see a lot of miscommunication and a lot of inefficiencies in our profession, working with realtors in your profession, trying to get the best answer for all of you. And that's really all I want to do. It's not exactly altruistic. I don't want to say that I'm sitting here doing this for free. I'm really not. I just want to make sure that there's a better communication between our industries. What do you want from an advisor? This is a question only you can answer. And how do you get started? And so I've kind of boiled everything down into really 5 questions. And these are 5 questions you really need to ask honestly. And these are not 1 or 2 word answers. These are not even 1 or 2 sentence answers. These are something you really need to sit down and spend 1 or 2 pages writing down, answering these questions. Excuse me, I have allergies, so I'm hoping not to lose my voice during this.
It's wonderful Colorado.
Yeah, it's that time of year. So those of you who aren't familiar with Colorado, I get allergies here in Denver where I live. Then I go to the mountains and I get new allergies because they're about a month behind us.
Yep.
So question number 1, do I want one person to do everything? And when I say everything, excuse me, it's, do I want to hand all of my information to one person to input into the computer, to review it, then review the output from the computer, sit down and analyze it, and then come up with a plan for me, and then put together goals? All of that being done by one person, or do I want that to be a team? Both of which are perfectly acceptable answers. But if you want one person to do it, you need to really focus in on one small advisor. Working with a larger firm isn't going to enable you to do that and have that one person to contact. But if you don't mind working with a broader team where you have very junior people working with you, if you want the broader team, the more with a single point of contact maybe, but having junior people working on your return, by all means, go with a bigger firm and a bigger team. It gives you more options. What's your risk tolerance? Do you mind taking a riskier position in order to more align with your goals? And we'll talk about risk a little later, but is your advisor having these communications with you, or are you subject to their risk tolerance? Meaning they're not having these communications with you, and they are making your decisions on risk tolerance for you without ever having these communications with you, which may be they're making very risky decisions without having advising you, or they're not making any decisions on risk and they're not telling you. You need to make that decision, write it down, and have that communication with your advisor. How often do I want to meet with my advisor? I have clients that don't want to meet with me at all. They want an engagement letter. They want to send me in the information. They want the output, and they want to send me, and they want an invoice. That's all they want to see me. And I'm okay with that. I have others that want to meet with me or have a call weekly. I'm okay with whatever the client wants. But it's up to them. It's up to the client to dictate what they want to meet with me on. And it's really up to you. How often do you want to meet with your advisor? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? What do you need to communicate? If it's simply, hey, where are we? Maybe weekly is too much. Maybe quarterly is the right answer. I would venture to say, if you're a realtor, you're running your own business, annually is not frequently enough. Am I willing to pay more to invest in strategies that reduce my taxes, that transfer wealth, that generate more wealth? Or am I just want to pay a fee at the end of the year to my accountant? And do I trust my accountant to know everything there is? Or do I trust the team to know everything there is about finances and tax? And is that really reasonable? I have clients that trust me to know everything, and I tell them that's unreasonable because I know what I know, and I don't pretend to know anything different than what I know, and I tell them that. Big question: are your fees a cost, or are they an investment? A cost is a fee that you pay for a good or service. An investment is what you pay with the expectation of getting something more back. An example, 2020. I had, as a course of my divorce, I had 2 rental properties I wanted to get rid of. One of which was in New Jersey. And my idea, 2020, of the best realtor in the world was one that charged a 2.9% commission and gave 2.8% to the real realtor that added value. That's the one with the buyer. So I signed a lowest possible commission, and I got what I paid for. I had a renter in the property who did not want to move out, did not clean the property, basically squatted. And I came to the table with a lot of money to close that property. Second property was here in Colorado. I wanted the same 2.9% realtor, and the realtor that I used talked to me about market plan. And I actually had a unique property that had a lot of sunlight in it, but the lanai looked bad. So we updated the lanai. We talked about market strategy. We talked about staging. We talked about focusing in on what was unique about that property. And I paid a lot in commission, of double what I wanted to pay. And I ended up getting quite a bit more for the property. I made an investment in that property, and I got a lot out of it. I got triple, 3 or 4 times what I expected to get. The same is true, and I have 3 examples here of clients. Client A is an investor. B and C are 2 realtors. They used low budget tax return preparers. Preparer A took coupons so they were competing with Domino's for returns. but we were hired to do a separate project for them, and we noticed mistakes in the returns. Client A had a condo in Hawaii. The accountant pulled aside land and didn't depreciate the land on the condo. But if you know anything about real estate in Hawaii, nobody owns land in Hawaii. All the land in Hawaii is owned by the royal family. Is held in trust for the royal family. So pulling aside land would be inappropriate. Unfortunately, because they pulled it aside and didn't appreciate it when they placed it in service, they couldn't go back and make an amended return for this. So they lost the $20,000 deduction that they couldn't get back. Client B owned a home that they converted to a real property, but they lost 91. They renovated the home. They put 91,000 that the accountant never knew about. So they never got that as depreciation. They lost that because the accountant never asked the question, did you update your home before you placed it for rent? And the third was the client bought a home, immediately renovated it, placed it for service. The accountant never asked the question, did you put any money to renovate the home before you rented it? All three were mistakes that cost the client, in this case, about $60,000. We went in and asked the client, we can fix this. It's going to cost you, $3,000 to $4,000. Do you want us to fix it? All three of the clients said, yeah, we want you to fix it. The investment that they made was paid because we were able to recover their lost funds. The return that they got on their investment ranged from 80% to 1,040%. And that's looking at the fee that they paid us was more than they paid for their return fat, but it's an investment. It wasn't a cost out of pocket. And that's the way we want you to look at your return prep fee. It needs to be looked at as an investment, not as a cost. Similar to as you would want your clients to look at your real estate commissions. Relationship. This is the single most important thing that you have with your advisor. You want to communicate, be able to communicate your goals succinctly with your advisor. And you want to be able to understand their strategies for you. The best client I ever had told me when I was young that he wants me thinking of them on my drive into work every day. And I did. And he ultimately got a lot of free time because I went up billing him for my drive in. But I got a lot of fees because I call him a couple times a week and say, hey, Bill, what do you think of? And we sat down and we ultimately did a lot of work together because of that. We had that type of relationship. Again, I also have clients that don't want to hear from me. If I have an idea on another client, they're willing to hear it, but they don't want to hear from me every day, every week, every month, every quarter. They want to hear from me when I have a good idea for them. But it's up to you to make that investment with your advisor so that they understand really what you want. It's up to you to make that investment and communication.
Quick question for you, Joe. And I know it's kind of a difficult one to gauge across the nation, but in your experience, how many people should we be talking to get a really good feel for if we're finding our best fit?
As many as it takes.
Okay.
Hey,
fair enough.
You'll know. I'm not a fan of what I call speed dating.
Right.
An advisor, a realtor, a doctor. You'll have your list of questions, and that's why I start out with the 5. You'll start with what you're really looking for. And if you spend some time on those questions, you've got an idea whether your advisor works for you or not. And you start with your advisor. That's the best place to start. And you can work with your advisor to determine whether they're working for you. And if they're not, how do you get them to work better for you? And if you don't, if they're not, there's 1,000 different ways to figure out, how many it's going to take.
That's a
And
good answer. Thank you.
yeah. Um, again, starting with the relationship, 3 more questions. These can be yes and no. And this is really kind of getting to your question, Amy, is does my advisor have to be the person who enters the information into the computer? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then you're really focused on a small firm and really one person in that firm. If the answer is no, now you've broadened yourself to a larger firm and you have more options. Second question is the person who enters the information into the computer have to live in the same area that I do? And if the answer is no, does that person, if you live in Austin, Texas, can that person live in Kansas City, Orlando, Manila, the Philippines? Can they live in Chennai, Mumbai? The further away from you they live, the more opportunity you have, and specifically overseas. Again, the average age of CPAs is over 60. The average age of accountants, enrolled agents, qualified return preparers is probably well into its 50s. There aren't qualified people coming into the industry. And there are overseas. And they're younger, they're faster. Yeah, we pay them less, but their cost per hour isn't less because the technology to secure that information, the private information is incredibly high in comparison to having them here in the US. But they're better, they're faster, and it creates a 24-hour workforce. I love the idea of pushing a button at 8 p.m., waking up at 8 a.m. and having 12 hours worth of work done. It creates that 24-hour workforce, and it is provides a lot of opportunity. Now the question on advisor, does your primary advisor have to live in the same area you do? I live in Denver. My advisor lives in New Jersey. If something happens to me, my kids know, my babies are 31 and 34, so they're not young. But they know to call my advisor in New Jersey, Uncle Freddie. Yeah, if any questions that they were in New Jersey, that's the answer. 2 red flags. And I hear this all the time from realtors. I'm uncomfortable calling my accountant because they're so busy and I don't want to bother them. Number 2, I left my accountant a message last week and I haven't heard back. If you hear either one of those or you're uncomfortable calling your accountant, stop. You may not be a priority to your accountant and you need to address whether you need to move. You may be doing your accountant a favor by moving. If you're not a priority to them, they may not want to fire you because you're nice. But I have clients that aren't a priority to me. And I like them. I don't want to give them bad news, but I don't want to fire them. But they're not a priority. They're not the ones I'm calling back every day. I just charge them more. And you may be doing your accountant a favor by moving on and having a tough conversation with them saying, I need to move on. They may not be that tough to have that conversation with, but you need to be a priority to whoever you're working with. Let's talk a little bit about risk. Risk is defined by tax accountants as any position. What's the risk that a position, when you exhaust every appeal at the IRS and in the courts, that it's going to be sustained? And there's all these different rules, all these different levels of authority, and I've written them down on the right-hand side with some examples. They don't matter. The second one is what I call accountant ignorance. These are the ones where an accountant will say no because they don't know what the idea is. They'll say no because they've never heard of it. They're uncomfortable with it. This is where the accountant's risk tolerance isn't level set. They don't understand the idea. They haven't worked in this area. They're saying no to something they don't understand. And I've heard this more than once. I haven't worked with it. I'm guessing it's illegal. The flip side of that is true. And I work with a developer, and in 2000, they built a boutique hotel in the Vail Valley. And as part of the sale of the hotel, the developer retained 3 condos. And they rent them out as part of the hotel. You can't tell the difference if you're walking through the hotel. The cost of these condos in early 2000 was about 90,000 each. They're now worth about $1.25 million. In 2016, they renovated the condos at the price of about 300,000 each. And renovation, they're not busting down the walls. They took out the wood burning fireplace because they're now illegal in Eagle County, and put in an electric fireplace. They changed the cabinets. They changed the flooring. They pulled out the built-in bedroom units, and they put in new cabinetry. They changed out the showers. All of this stuff is fully deductible if you've done the right mapping for it. But when they placed it in service in 2000, they never did a cost segregation study. The accountant, not knowing any better, fully deducted this $900,000 of costs. A couple years later, it's flagged by the IRS. IRS wasn't able to map these costs back to the $90,000 condos. So they denied the deductions, and they determined that these deductions were frivolous, that they had no basis in law to be deducted. They assessed a 40% penalty and interest, and provided an $800,000 tax bill to the client. The accountants dug their heels in, and every time they talked to the IRS, they supported the IRS's argument. Not because they were incompetent, but because they were unfamiliar with this area. They just kept digging their heels in. Now, the client were social friends of mine, and I heard about it. And I don't want to play hero here. It's just a difference between a specialist and a generalist. I happen to work on the regulations with Treasury on this specific area. Went back, remapped all of the costs back to the original costs, did a cost segregation study as if we did it back in 2000. Got a no change letter from the service. The point of this isn't that we went in and saved the day. The point is that the client's accountant created risk that they never communicated to the client because they were ignorant of the actual rules and the accounting for those rules. They never communicated it to the client because they were a generalist doing the work of a specialist. So I want to talk about a little bit about what a generalist does versus what a specialist does. A generalist is probably what your accountant does now. A generalist does tax returns. They're broad-based. They know a little bit about everything. They know a lot of tax law. They know its application to individuals, businesses, not-for-profits, to pension plans. They know industries really well. They'll know real estate. They'll know hospitality, manufacturing, distribution. They'll know their industry really well. They can look objectively at multiple clients within that industry and they can objectively look at how a client can meet their goals. They can help them create their goals. They can prepare the returns. They can prepare all the filings. They are the best financial people that you can work with on a day-to-day basis. Excuse me. Why? Because they know a little bit about everything. And a very good generalist will be able to work with a specialist to help you meet your goals. They can also work with multiple specialists to keep them from canceling each other out, and prioritize the work of various different specialists to help you meet your goals, and create priorities for you. What a generalist cannot do. They're rarely, if ever, a specialist. Think of a generalist like Zillow. Zillow is really, really good at determining the value of one zip code versus another zip code. What Zillow really isn't good at is determining the value of an individual home. And I know you've had clients who have fought with you tooth and nail saying, Zillow says the value of my house is X. But it's not. Because Zillow takes general information from a variety of different sources and comes up with a number, which doesn't necessarily reflect reality. A generalist is a little bit like your family practitioner, who's a phenomenal medical professional, but you don't necessarily expect them to do your kidney transplant or do open heart surgery or anything specialized. They should never, ever do the work of a specialist. They should never try. Typically, it's malpractice if they do. Okay. What's a specialist? Specialist, I consider myself a specialist. I do primarily complex mergers and acquisitions. I do partnership allocations, and I do accounting methods. Those are the three things I do, and I do them really well. When it comes to accounting methods, I'm one of about 24 people in the US that do them. My specific area, I'm probably one of a half a dozen people in the US that do them. I train the other 5 because I'm the oldest. I'm still doing it. A specialist is one of a few dozen, maybe 100, that does one specific thing. We rarely, if ever, do a tax return. So what I've done is I've put together a list of things that you would expect a specialist to do that your generalist really wouldn't do. Cost segregation, renovations, repair studies. You need a specialist for this. I know one person in the entire US that is a CPA and an engineer who can do both. But she does cost seg studies and repair studies. She doesn't do tax returns. Retirement plans, IRA, 401k planning, it's typically done by a specialist. Complex IRS examinations, there's some IRS agents who do complex controversy work. Real property taxes, transaction taxes, which are sales and uses taxes on complex transactions, usually done by a specialist. Employment taxes, almost always done by a specialist. Wealth transfer generation skipping taxes, I have an asterisk against those, which can be done by a generalist, but typically you have 2 different people doing these because they have a specialty in doing one or the other. Long-term financial planning, this is typically someone who does one or the other, but they can do both. Life, casualty, health insurance planning. I know insurance agents who do tax returns, and I know CPAs that do sell health insurance. I don't know why, because it just kind of makes them do, they're doing a cruddier job at both of them. rather than just picking one and sticking to it. Cash management, short-term financial planning. Again, they can do both, but I think you're better off doing one or the other. Trust, not-for-profit, and retirement plan accounting is kind of a niche area where you typically see people doing one or the other, not both. Generalists are typically more expensive, or specialists are typically more expensive than a generalist. Again, you get into the cost versus investment. Typically, you would look at a specialist as being more of an investment, a generalist being more of a cost. But again, you should always look at your financial advisor as an investment. You should always, always, always involve your advisor, your generalist, when working with a specialist, because you can have the work of a specialist cancel out the work of another specialist. And unless you have someone looking at your overall goals and your overall picture, financial picture, that can happen fairly easily. I won't know doing a renovation study if I'm canceling out the work that someone else has done already. But by the same token, I would never, it would be a bad idea to have your generalist, your financial advisor, make a decision on a specialist study without having sat down and talked with both you and the specialist together to understand the work and the technical ramifications going into the study itself and how it works through your specific requirements. The last thing you want to hear, and I get this a lot from Chris Bird would be a great example from Chris's top 10 list, which I think is a phenomenal list. But if you go to your advisor and say, hey, Chris said I should do this, and your advisor says it doesn't work for you, what do you do next? Best thing is call me, find an advisor, call Chris, find an advisor, a specialist who can go in there with you and speak with your advisor and make sure that you know why it doesn't work for you. So that's the difference between a generalist and a specialist. What to do now? Answer the 5 questions. Answer them honestly. You're going to find out what works for you and what you really want. And then talk to your advisor. Communicate your expectations. Find out what theirs are. You may not have a good match. You may have a great match, and you may be doing things exactly the way you want them, or you may not. But you can always tweak it. Ask for help. You can always call me. You can always send me an email. My email will be included with the presentation. My phone number, I think, is included. If not, you can get it. I'll give it to you. Again, I don't get referral fees. I don't get commissions. I just want to be helpful. Interview new advisors. Even if you're sold on the one that you have, you may get something new. You may find someone brand new that works better, but you get new ideas that you could take to your new advisor. Seek advice. You are going to have to change, especially if you're under 50 years old. You are going to have to change. Think about it. Seek advice. If you're so inclined, pray about it. But you got to act now. Eventually, you have to act. And with that, I can't believe I did this under 40 minutes. I really love this voice.
I'm so impressed, Joe. It helps that I didn't interrupt you, which I have a tendency to do. So I decided to behave myself
So my
today.
phone number's here.
There is so much good information in here. And I know for me personally that interviewing accountants, which should just be a very data-oriented, logical thing, becomes a very emotional thing for me. And so when you counsel people in this process, how do you help them step over the emotion of the situation, which might partially be I'm just embarrassed about my financial picture. It could be I've been burned in the past and I'm going to be slow to trust. If I were to call you today, Joe, how do you help me get around that?
Well, this is an emotional decision. And, I liken it to, you are experts at what you do. I'm not a real estate expert. I'm not. And so with my example with, my favorite realtor is the 2.9% realtor, I have to I have to learn, and it's an emotional decision for me. You deal with that every day. If you make it more about the numbers, you're not playing to your strengths. Make it about the motions. Understand what's valuable to you, what you need. And if you need this to be more of an emotional decision, then make it more of an emotional decision. That's why you need to build a relationship first. The numbers will take care of themselves.
That makes sense to me. Okay, let's open it up to the group. What questions, for those of you who have been hanging on intently here, what are the questions that you have about this whole process? What's important to you guys? And you can either type it in the chat or you can unmute yourself and just ask Joe directly yourself. I think you just packed them so full of information, Joe, they're not even sure what else to ask you. So you did give us your phone number, Joe.
Yeah.
For someone to be well prepared to have a conversation with you, what are the things that you would recommend they come to the table with? Either you or anybody that they're interviewing. I know you gave us the 5 questions, but are there things they should be preparing in terms of financial statements or anything of that nature that
Yeah, if they're looking to change. The other thing is, if they have one of these, they attend, Chris is a good example. If they attend one of Chris's seminars and they get these ideas, they have investment properties, they're not sure what a cost segregation study is. Call me. I don't have a problem explaining it to them. If they hear a strategy that a friend has and they're unsure what it is and they don't want to talk to their accountant, call me. I don't have a problem sitting down with them and explaining it to them. Again, I'm on a mission to make taxes easy. They really should be. It's really, that's really what I want to do, is try and make this easier for everyone.
wonderful.
And I
All
appreciate
right.
everyone's time. I really do.
Absolutely. I'm super happy we were able to bring you here today, Joe. And if any of you have questions, you'd like to reach out to Joe directly. He did put his email address there. Or feel free to reach out to us and we'll forward to Joe. We're happy to get you guys connected. We really want you to have a solid financial house, and this is a super important piece of that. So, Joe, on behalf of our whole family here at Star Power, we sure thank you for being with us today. And we hope to share more of Joe in the future. He's a fountain of
You all.
wisdom.
Thank you,
Thank
Amy.
you.
Thanks, Tammy. Bye.
Bye.